So by the year 2050, the prices of certain critical minerals are projected to surge, like 50 times their current value. I mean, 50 times.
Yeah, it's honestly hard to wrap your head around that number.
Right. The new global gold rush isn't for petroleum or coal anymore. It's really for the raw materials that are powering the 21st century.
Exactly.
So today, our mission in this deep dive is to understand how India is mobilizing billions to secure these vital building blocks. We're unpacking the National Critical Minerals Mission, or the NCMM.
And, to really grasp the gravity of this, we have to look past just the market speculation. For a nation like India, securing these minerals is fundamentally about survival and, well, sovereignty.
Sovereignty, yeah, because it touches everything.
Right. These materials are the literal foundation for the tech in your pocket, the entire global transition to clean energy, and the most advanced military defense systems.
Which is huge.
Yeah. I mean, a country that doesn't control its mineral supply simply does not control its own future. It's that simple.
Okay, so let's look at why the demand is exploding in the first place and what this actually means for India specifically.
Sure.
The catalyst here is this massive convergence of high-tech industries. We're talking defense, aerospace, nuclear technology, and space applications.
All the heavy hitters.
Right, and they all require materials that can withstand just extreme conditions, like take a modern wind turbine or an EV motor.
Right, electric vehicles.
Yeah, you just cannot build them without permanent magnets, and those require elements like neodymium and praseodymium.
Right, which are metals that retain immense magnetic force at incredibly high temperatures, something standard iron just, cannot do.
Exactly. And we also have to overlay that technological shift onto India's monumental environmental commitment, which is achieving net zero emissions by 2070.
Which is a colossal infrastructural undertaking. I mean, reaching net zero requires an astronomical deployment of solar panels, wind turbines, and advanced batteries for grid storage.
Millions of them.
Yeah, and every single one of those technologies is completely dependent on a steady, massive supply of lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements.
Which brings up a pretty stark economic reality. Because right now, India currently imports almost all of its critical minerals.
Almost 100%.
So you have this booming demand for tech and green energy, but the raw material to fuel it has to be bought from outside the country. And relying on foreign sources just balloons the import bill, right?
Right, which directly worsens the current account deficit.
Exactly. And for anyone maybe a bit rusty on their macroeconomics, a high current account deficit basically means the country is sending far more money out to the rest of the world to buy goods than it is bringing in.
Right, which depreciates the national currency and imports inflation. You really can't ensure economic stability if your foundational industries are entirely dependent on foreign supply chains.
Right. It's like building this state-of-the-art billion-dollar fortress, but you leave the keys to the front gate in another country's hands.
That's a perfect way to put it.
I mean, how can a nation ensure its own security if it doesn't control the raw materials?
Well, it can't. And that vulnerability is the central structural problem the National Critical Minerals Mission is actually trying to solve.
Okay.
Because when you rely entirely on imports for strategic assets, you're at the mercy of geopolitical headwinds, trade wars, sudden supply shocks.
Like what we saw during the pandemic.
Exactly. So the rationale driving this mission is a fundamental shift from just demonstrating technological capability to asserting true strategic autonomy. I mean, if your energy grid and your national security apparatus depend on imported elements, your foreign policy is inherently constrained.
Right. So recognizing that vulnerability is step one, but fixing it is a massive undertaking. Let's dig into the master plan here.
Yeah, let's look at the numbers.
So the Ministry of Mines is managing the NCMM as this 7-year sprint, running from financial year 2024-25 through 2030-31. And the budget is just staggering.
Oh, it's massive.
It's 16,300 crore rupees dedicated from the central government, plus an expected additional investment of 18,000 crore from central public sector undertakings.
So you're looking at a tremendous mobilization of capital, over 34,000 crore in total.
Wow.
And the scale of the ambition really matches that capital. The target is to launch like 1,200 exploration projects by that 2030-31 deadline.
1,200.
1,200, yeah. Alongside auctioning off more than 100 critical mineral blocks. But I think the most crucial aspect of this policy framework is that it covers the entire value chain. It isn't just about extraction.
Okay, let's unpack this because I'm glad you brought up the value chain. Digging the minerals out of the ground is really only half the battle, right?
Oh, not even half.
Right. So the government's plan mandates the creation of dedicated mineral processing parks and a center of excellence for critical minerals. So they are pushing hard on the processing side.
Right, which
Yeah.
is historically where we've lagged behind.
Yeah. Let me try to put this into perspective with an analogy for you listening. Extracting rare earth elements from the ground is incredibly difficult because they are almost always mixed together in the exact same rock. And chemically, they're very, very
Or
similar.
very similar, yeah.
So trying to separate them is like, imagine someone giving you a fully baked cake and asking you to extract the flour, the sugar, and the eggs back out into separate bowls.
That sounds impossible.
Right. It requires hundreds of sequential solvent extraction steps using these highly toxic acids.
And that chemical complexity is exactly why processing capabilities are the true bottleneck in the global supply chain right now.
Right.
I mean, you can mine all the raw ore you want domestically, but if you lack the advanced hydrometallurgical facilities to separate and refine those minerals, you're just forced to ship the raw dirt to another country for processing anyway.
Which completely defeats the purpose of self-reliance.
Exactly. So this mission explicitly covers exploration, mining, processing, recycling, and even expands into offshore deep sea areas, just to ensure every potential source is tapped.
Right. And they're also offering direct financial incentives for recovering minerals from waste materials, specifically targeting something called mining overburden,
Right, the overburden.
which is
Yeah.
basically the millions of tons of like geologically useless rock and dirt that sits on top of the actual mineral deposit.
Yeah, the stuff you have to move to get to the good stuff.
Exactly. And historically, it's just pushed aside into these massive environmentally damaging piles. But the mission actually wants to incentivize technology that can sift through that historical waste to find trace amounts of critical minerals that, older, less efficient technologies missed.
Which is really smart. And the timing of this accelerated push is deeply tied to the shifting global chessboard, right? The NCMM is positioned to capitalize on the China plus one strategy.
Oh, right. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so this is the overarching geopolitical maneuver where global manufacturing companies and Western governments are trying to diversify their supply chains.
Because right now they're heavily dependent on China.
Exactly. They still do business with China, obviously, but they urgently need a secondary, reliable base of operations to mitigate risk.
Because China currently dominates the global processing of so many of these critical minerals. They've spent decades building the exact processing infrastructure we literally just talked about.
Right, the solvent extraction facilities.
Yeah. So by establishing a competitive value chain domestically, India is positioning itself as the premier alternative. The strategy is to attract foreign direct investment from countries like the US and the UK, who are frankly desperate to de-risk their own supply chains.
Absolutely.
I mean, if India proves it has the regulatory environment and the processing capacity, it becomes this indispensable strategic partner.
Right. And the mission also features this very aggressive outward posture, which is interesting. It's not just domestic. The NCMM actively encourages Indian companies, both state-owned and private firms, to acquire critical mineral assets abroad.
Oh, wow. We're at.
Well, mostly in resource-rich nations across Africa and South America. Furthermore, they're building a domestic strategic stockpile to ensure a steady supply during global emergencies.
So like a strategic petroleum reserve, but for minerals.
Exactly. Same concept.
Okay, let's hold on that global acquisition piece for a second. Playing defense at home by building mines and playing offense abroad by buying up foreign assets, that makes total sense to me. It's like playing 3D chess.
Yeah.
But there is another pillar to this strategy that seems a lot more tenuous to me.
Oh, which one?
The mission sets a very specific target to recycle 400 kilotons of critical mineral materials. They're establishing a recycling advisory group to optimize recovery from, like, end-of-life products.
Right, electronic waste.
Right, but I have to push back a bit on the feasibility of this.
Mm.
I mean, recovering lithium and cobalt from a shredded, highly volatile electric vehicle battery is notoriously expensive.
It is.
The thermodynamics of breaking down those complex chemical bonds takes an immense amount of energy, and it produces highly toxic byproducts.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have to ask, is a 400 kiloton recycling target actually economically viable right now? Or is this just kind of a green halo to make an inherently dirty mining initiative look environmentally friendly?
Well, that's a fair question. The economics of recycling are currently very challenging, yes, but structurally it is an absolute necessity.
How so?
Well, integrating recycling guidelines into the core of the mission demonstrates long-term strategic vision. Consider the supply chain vulnerabilities we just discussed. When you extract rare earth elements or lithium from an old smartphone or a depleted EV battery within your own borders, you completely bypass the geopolitical risks of foreign extraction.
Oh, I see. You don't have to ship it across the ocean.
Exactly. You bypass the shipping logistics, the tariffs, and the heavy environmental degradation of traditional open pit mining. You're basically treating electronic waste not as municipal garbage, but as a high-grade domestic ore deposit.
Huh. Urban ore.
Right. As extraction technologies mature, that urban ore becomes highly lucrative.
That reframing of electronic waste is fascinating. But I think we need to pivot to a reality check here.
Always a good idea.
Right. We've outlined this 34,000 crore master plan spanning multiple continents, the entire industrial value chain. What are the friction points? Like, what could cause this entire apparatus to stall out?
Well, a critical evaluation of state capacity is essential here. The ambition of the policy will inevitably collide with realistic limitations on the ground. And I'd say the first major hurdle is geological and infrastructural.
Yeah, the sources we're looking at point out that we suffer from a severe lack of comprehensive geological data.
Exactly.
I mean, the initial mapping might indicate deposits, but the attrition rate in mining exploration is just brutal. You can launch 1,200 exploration projects, conduct the satellite mapping, do the geochemical sampling, and, well, maybe only a handful will actually reveal a commercially viable, high-concentration deposit.
Right. The hit rate is incredibly low.
Yeah, then you add to that the inadequate transport networks connecting these super remote mining blocks to industrial centers. The physical hurdles alone are just monumental.
They are. And those physical hurdles are then compounded by deep systemic and institutional flaws.
Like what?
Slow approval processes and highly complex licensing requirements are chronic issues here. I mean, mining is a uniquely capital-intensive venture with incredibly long gestation periods. It can take a decade to go from initial exploration to commercial production.
The whole decade, wow.
Yeah. So when you introduce years of regulatory uncertainty regarding, say, environmental clearances and land acquisition, it just paralyzes the deployment of capital.
Which highlights a glaring contradiction in the policy, right?
Right.
Because the government is banking heavily on private investment to execute this.
Yes, they need the private sector.
But unclear policies and the high financial risk of these complex extraction methods are massive deterrents. It's like asking an investor to fund a $100 million blockbuster movie, but you refuse to show them the script or guarantee they'll ever get past the censor.
Well, that's exactly what it feels like for these companies.
Right. The risk profile is just way too high for private capital without absolute regulatory stability.
And the tension between development and the environment is probably the most difficult tightrope the government has to walk. Mining causes real, lasting ecological damage. There's no getting around that.
Yeah.
Critical mineral projects often face intense localized public opposition, which can trap operations and litigation for years. So balancing the national security imperative for these minerals with the necessity of environmental conservation, well, it requires significant governance reform.
And there's also a massive skill gap we haven't touched on. I mean, the mission requires executing over 1,000 exploration projects and building these complex hydrometallurgical processing parks.
Right.
We are not just talking about heavy machinery operators here. This requires advanced chemical engineers, specialized metallurgists, and cutting-edge geologists. And the domestic workforce is currently facing a severe shortage of these highly technical professionals.
Absolutely. Addressing that human resource bottleneck requires targeted degree programs and capacity-building partnerships with established mining nations. Going forward, the success of the NCMM depends entirely on institutional strengthening.
So they can't just throw money at it.
Right. The government has to foster genuine public-private partnerships where the financial risks of exploration and new technology adoption are shared rather than placing the entire burden on the private sector.
Because it really is a race against time at this point. The 2070 net zero deadline is looming, the domestic tech manufacturing sector is exploding, and the defense apparatus just requires constant modernization to keep pace with regional rivals.
Exactly. So when we synthesize all of these elements from the sources, the core takeaway is clear. India's National Critical Minerals Mission is far more than an industrial policy. It's a fundamental rewiring of the nation's economic engine.
A complete rewiring.
Yeah. By mobilizing massive capital, launching thousands of projects, and attempting to create this closed-loop system from deep-sea mining to urban recycling, India is actively trying to insulate itself from an increasingly volatile global order.
Right.
It is an incredibly difficult maneuver. It's fraught with bureaucratic, environmental, and infrastructural risks, yet it remains an absolutely necessary step to secure economic and military sovereignty in a multipolar world.
Well said. And for you, listening to this right now, why should you care about bureaucratic mining policies, solvent extraction, or offshore exploration blocks?
Right, why does it matter?
Because literally everything about the modern world hinges on who controls these hidden minerals. The price you pay for your next EV, the cost and processing power of the smartphone in your hand, the speed of the global climate transition, and the geopolitical stability of the region. It all rests on an invisible foundation of lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements.
Absolutely. As global demand continues to skyrocket, the nations that hold the raw materials and the processing capabilities hold the geopolitical leverage. The transition we're witnessing right now will redefine global power structures for the next century.
Which brings me to a final lingering thought. We talked extensively about the thermodynamics of recycling and treating electronic waste as a resource.
The urban ore.
The urban ore, yeah. If technology advances rapidly enough, and if the cost of breaking down old batteries plummets, could the massive landfills of discarded electronics sitting outside our major cities eventually become more valuable than traditional underground mines? Could the future superpower of critical minerals actually be the country that perfects urban mining, extracting immense wealth from its own past consumption, rather than the one that just happens to have the most favorable geology?
It's a fascinating shift in perspective.
Definitely something to think about next time you toss an old phone in a junk drawer.